Hello all and welcome to episode 39 of the 3-for-1 Sky Fantasy Podcast by Fantasy Football Hub as we finally get to the second overhaul with just one game to go tomorrow evening. What a season it has been so far. We finally get the chance to completely refresh our teams and chase the coveted £50,000. My name is Fergie and I am joined by three of the most successful Sky managers in the game. Firstly, Paul McAnulty. How was your weekend gone, Paul?
Yeah, it's went not too bad. Thanks, Fergie. Son, captain today, returned with an average day yesterday, but it wasn't too bad.
You didn't have Rudiger then?
I didn't have Rudiger, no.
Okay, well, so harsh for owners. We were just talking off air and just saying that's one of the all-time classic fantasy things which just kind of grab you and kick you in the nuts as soon as you're trying to make a bit of progress, something like that. It just hurts so bad. And the odds on that happening, the odds on Rudiger scoring an own goal against Sheffield United is incredibly low. But anyway, we also have former Sky winner Dan Cox. Dan, how did your pre-overhaul weekend go?
Yeah, that was pretty good, mate. To be honest, I was would have been better if Gundogan hadn't scored a couple of goals. I was quite pleased. Yeah, I actually did speak to someone German. He said it is pronounced Gundogan, but we'll go with everyone seems to be saying Gundogan.
Including Gundogan himself, right?
So yeah, that was all right. Apart from him getting a couple of goals, but hopefully not many people captained him. So yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
He's been a bit of a superstar, hasn't he, Gundogan? To be fair, and I'm glad we can finally get rid of these myths that, you know, he's this holding midfielder, sometimes runs the box. He scored both of his goals in the 6-yard box and he missed a penalty. You will not get any more, kind of attacking than that away to Liverpool at Anfield. He is the man. And I'm so pleased we can finally dispel this myth that, he just gets forward now and then. He is the man. We're also incredibly privileged this evening to welcome the king of Sky Planning himself, Mr. Ian Parrin. Ian, welcome.
Hi Andrew, hi Paul, hi Dan.
And how's your season going, Ian? I think you're doing okay. You're above me, I think.
Yeah, currently 183rd, I think, something like that.
Very nice. And how's your second team doing?
In the top 300.
Nice spot to be in with.
Yeah, last time I was here, I was 2.5k. So.
Oh, there you go. Moved nicely then, Ian. Great stuff. As we are live, please feel free to join in the chat at any time. Let us know your thoughts on the topics throughout the relevant sections and feel free to ask us questions to answer at the end. We have got lots of questions to answer at the end, as you can imagine. Good evening all. Plenty of people in the chat. We've got Tom C, Sean Thorpe, Steve Wright, Hornet, Harry Brown, David Hurd. First time watching live, David. Welcome. Great to have you with us this evening. Ryan Wilkins, Glenn Murray, Phil Speck, Brownie, Fire and Blood, Mark Wright, Gordon Hamilton, Auto Reclose, Marius Ionita, who I noticed is top in Telegraph. Sneaky there, Marius. You kept that quiet. Very well done there, Marius. Having a great season. Sun Dream Team, Flower Pot Man, and Glenn Murray. Welcome one and welcome all. So for any new watchers and listeners, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Set the alerts so you don't miss our live streams, which are 9 p.m. every Sunday right here on this channel. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So tonight, Paul will share some bonus stats for us from the past 6 weeks and pick out a couple of under-the-radar gems. Dan will share some ownership and transfer stats. And we're going to get a fixture projection masterclass off Ian, as he's going to talk us through the next few weeks and months from a fixture perspective, both in terms of confirmed and projected fixtures. And we will take a look at the player options as we work our way through. We will answer lots of Twitter questions. We will try and answer all of them if we can. And we'll finish off, as usual, with Dan's rant. Settle in. It could be a late one. Go straight into it. And Paul, bonus stats up on screen for you.
Yeah, top 5 players over the last 6 weeks. So that was including yesterday's games, but not today's. You've got Thiago out on top on 20. Granit Xhaka behind him on 18. So he's starting to pick up bonus again. Rodri, Kovacic both on 17. And Wan-Bissaka on 16. I think Wan-Bissaka's going under the radar a little bit. I think he might be a decent option post-overhaul. But with him being similar price to the City defenders, I don't think many people will plump for him. What was interesting is there's a lot of Chelsea players in there now, and having a look at the first set of fixtures, I don't want to steal Ian's thunder too much, so I'll only talk briefly on it. But on the first I don't think that West Ham's fixtures are particularly great. So I know people will be penciling in Antonio on the first Monday because there's only 2 games: West Ham, Sheffield United, and Chelsea, Newcastle. So as an alternative, Chelsea have got really nice fixtures. So going for one of the passing defenders, I'd say Rudiger, but I don't mean to rub salt in wounds for anyone, or even Azpilicueta, or someone in midfield like Kovacic might cover that game off instead of going for the West Ham players from Antonio. I picked up 5 differentials that I don't think I've seen any of them named on Twitter or on anybody's any Overhaul articles that I've looked at or anybody that's really been talked about. The first one I want to mention is Robert Sanchez from Brighton, the goalkeeper. 6 million. Actually, he was cheaper than what I thought he was. I think when we previously spoke about the cheapest playing goalkeeper, it was Mesley, and that was because it was still Matt Ryan in goals for Brighton at the time. But Sanchez has outscored Ederson in the last 6 games.
That's incredible.
So Sanchez has got 53 points, and Ederson, including today's, has got 48 points now. And thinking that the Brighton have 1, possibly 2 single match days coming up after the overhaul at 6 million, that budget might be able to use elsewhere. Second player I was going to talk about is Jack Harrison, 6.9 million from Leeds, 3 goals in his last 6 games. Third player, Craig Dawson from West Ham, 5.8. I'm usually worried about that price point because I couldn't move him on anywhere, but I would be more worried if it, from fullbacks that were in teams and knowing that there would be potential rotation. I think that David Moyes has now settled on him and Ogbonna being his partnership of choice at the back. So, and again, he could cover off that West Ham fixture as well if you didn't want to go Antonio and then spending less budget. And then the other 2 who aren't on screen that I'd mentioned, the differentials that aren't really spoken about, is Sterling. And I never pick Sterling in the middle of seasons, but I always think he starts a season well and ends a season really well. And just with the Man City volume of games, he could be a good option. And another one, someone that scored today, Mason Mount. Again, Chelsea coverage, 8.6 million, be a nice differential. At that 8 million mark, I mentioned it in one of the previous pods, if I was going for him, I would just get him in and stick with him. No rotating around that 8 million mark because you'll end up losing out on a haul because it'll go 2-2, 12, 13, 2-2, 15, 20. And I always think that like the decent players in that 8 million budget, you'd miss out on some hauls. So I would just sit and stick if I went and did that.
Nice picks there, Paul. Just a couple of points on a few things you mentioned there. So with Chelsea looking the way they are, I'm surprised that Jorginho wasn't in your original list because he seems to be hoovering up the bonus as well, doesn't he? And he's on penalties. He scored 2 now in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm assuming that Jorginho isn't in there because he wasn't playing at the end of Frank's reign, and I think Tuchel, is this his 3rd game? This is his 3rd league game now, so
that's right. And Kovacic has picked up tackling bonus as well, so that's bumped him up a bit. Yeah.
So yeah, I think he is a good option. Werner seems to have picked up a little bit, so I think he's just got 4 assists in his last 3 games. Mike Neve has just put in the chat that he thinks Werner might be man of the match as well. I'm not sure whether that was confirmed on Sky, but he may be one. It's very, very easy to look back, I think, at players. And kind of look at them moving forward. But we always have to be looking forward about what we think might happen, not what has happened. So, I do like looking at, the bonus status of they tell a really good story, and I like looking back at kind of XG and things like that. But Sterling's another one. I agree with you. And you can tell with Sterling when he's scoring points because he passes the eye test. It's like the last 2 or 3 games, he's really, really dangerous. He basically set up the first goal earlier on. I know it. He slipped inside, passed it to Foden, saved and went to Gundogan, but that was all Sterling. He won the penalty as well. He's really looking back to that dangerous form where he cuts inside the left-hand side, runs in the box. So I think Werner and Sterling in particular are two that will fly under the radar, but could actually have quite a big impact in the coming weeks.
Sterling seems to look better when Jesus isn't playing and getting in his way, doesn't it?
Jesus, I think we mentioned it last week, I think, didn't we? He's just, I don't know, he just seems to be a bit of a liability at the moment, don't he? He seems to get his goal kind of every other game, but
he just gets in people's ways.
He does,
from what I can see.
He does, and he loses the ball a lot as well. Just to say that late game is now finished. Sheffield United 1, Chelsea 2, so that one is all over. Really good stuff there, Paul. Dan, any thoughts on any of the bonus or any of the picks or anything off Paul?
They're all good options, mate. Like, do you know what I mean? They'll all be in the Overhaul sort of short lists. How
long is your short list at the moment, Dan?
I think you can take it down. Then I was looking at what Ian will go on to later, but some of the fixtures and stuff. So that obviously makes it a bit longer because you wouldn't be. Well, I know Paul said about Sanchez, the goalkeeper's good, but he wouldn't initially be in my thoughts. But when you think like the games they might have, he might have to. So I don't know. I think there's 25, 30 players. I think you could, should have on your shortlist, but it's just then picking the right ones at the right time.
Okay.
You're looking at the bonus points for Jorginho, Andrew.
Yeah.
He's when I did the update for the transfer planner, he'd had 66 points so far this season, and 20 of those were in bonus points, so nearly a third.
He just got passing and tackling today as well, so that's another 5 on top of that.
Yeah, so that boosted up to probably a third then overall after today.
Yeah, and the penalty as well. If he's back in playing every game,
and if he's going to play every week, and he's going to be on the penalties, isn't he? So
he's probably the most nailed on for passing out of anyone in the Premier League when they play this way, aren't they? Because he just sits smack in the middle, and it's not like he even gets close to the 60 or 70 passes. When he's playing there, he tends to get 90 plus.
Well over
like with Henderson, at times as well. When they're playing in that very specific role, they just get all the passes all the time, don't they? So interesting options there. Okay, Dan, most transferred in the last week.
So yeah, since last Sunday, bearing in mind that has been coming up to Overhaul, so I don't know if people have been slowing down or not. But anyway, in the last week, the most transferred in, Salah, 15,623. Hopefully they picked him up last Sunday before the West Ham game. Diaz, the second most in, 14,114.
That's been a bit slow on the uptake with Diaz, isn't it?
Yeah.
in the last week before Overhaul, flipping out.
Yeah, so that is a bit odd, isn't it? Cancelo, 8,298. James Maddison, he has been in good form, 8,298. And then they wouldn't have been pleased yesterday, but Souček into 6,732 was the fifth most transferred in. That was annoying. Do you want me to go straight into the outs?
Yeah, into the outs, yes, please.
So since last Sunday again, most transferred out, Harry Kane, 24,000 teams, 810.
Nightmare.
That have been delighted that he started today. Just
goal tier 2 and man of the match in the end, was it?
Yeah, you don't need it, do you? He's going to be. Do you know what I mean? Annoying. Anyway, we won. Zaha, he was second most out, 14,691. Mane out of 14,522. Zuma out of 14,353. And Ben Chilwell at 7,494. So that was your top 5 ins and outs.
I think that's where your Diaz's ins were coming from. Then was the Zuma and Chilwell outs, was it?
Yeah, possibly. That could be.
Yeah. And Bednarek was next with 6,600. I assume that was a few rage transfers there, I would guess.
-8. -8 you got, wasn't it, against the United?
He's had a nightmare goal.
Nearly had another own goal yesterday as well, didn't he?
It's funny because he's actually played really, really well this season. And I know from the Telegraph game, from the last podcast we did in January for Telegraph, I think he was the best points per million player in the whole game. So a lot of people jumped on him, but he got -12 in Telegraph.
when Frank from FF Stuff tweets out the best 11 from Sky for the last 6 games, I'm sure he's been in that a couple of times up until recently as well.
Yeah, no, he's a really good defender. Vestergaard will be back soon. Romeo will be back soon as well. So I wouldn't completely dismiss Southampton, because at Christmas time they were the form team. They were the one who everyone was scared of playing. So one of my kind of points or themes I think will be mentioned a few times over the next hour or two, however long it takes, is form changes so quickly, right? And hopping from one thing to the next all the time, isn't necessarily the best thing, to kind of do a lot of the time. And I think with Southampton, they're not going to concede 9 every week. Bednarek is not going to score on goals, get sent off every week, and stuff. And I think a lot of the times that when people stay faithful to a certain player because they believe that he's a good fancy option, they tend to come good over a long period of time, more often than not. But sorry, going off there a bit philosophical, I suppose. Dan, average transfers remaining.
So again, this was from middle of the week, so before all the Kane's outs, and there's been a lot of transfers made since we had these. But the top 10 average remaining transfers was 12.1. Top 100 was 13.4. Top 1,000 was 14.4, and the top 5,000 was 13.1. But I say again, that was before the Wednesday, Thursday game. So they'll all probably be down at least a transfer, I'd have thought.
Okay, yeah. You'd probably guess the averages, around that point would now be 12 or 13, I would guess, wouldn't they? Which, it's quite, it's not bad actually, because that is roughly a transfer per game week for the rest of the season, right? So it's probably higher than we thought, because a few months ago when we were tweeting these out all the time, they were going really low, but they obviously averaged out, and we warned this all the way through, didn't we?
It's all concertinaed back together, hasn't it? Now
this is it. This is exactly
right at the start of the season. The top 10 and the top 100, they were rifling through them.
They were, and
now it seems to everybody's sort of within 2 of each other now, 12.1 to 14.4.
But 90% of those managers, or even higher, are now 5 or 10,000 rank, right? Because they just burned through them and they've just gone. Whereas this is why I think we took a bit of stick actually a few weeks ago around advice, of holding transfers back. But we've still got nearly half the season to play, right? And there's a long way to go still. And I'm pretty sure that come 5 or 10 games to go, you look back at some of the transfers that we all made earlier on the season, think, why did I make that transfer? Why did I go for that stupid captaincy or whatever it was, when you really, really need one, kind of right at the death? So those average transfers remaining, and that's the whole discipline in Sky, as it is in every fantasy game, is sitting on your hands and making transfers at the right time. Okay, so we go on to Ian's planner now. So Ian, I'm on your first graphic. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah. Okay. So this is off the Hub's transfer planner, and there's a fixture counts tab there that you can filter however you like, basically by game week start, game week end, number of game weeks, number of days from a certain date, number of days from a certain game week. It's all of the tools are there to help you out. So I've done a couple of shots of what we currently know. So from Overhaul week until the end of the season, on the left-hand side of the screen there, you can see who's got how many fixtures left. And the most is 17 for Villa and Everton. And then there's 5 or 6 clubs that have got 16, and everybody else has got 15. But overall, there's still 156 fixtures remaining to be played. So you said we're halfway through the season, Andrew. There's 41% of the games still to be played.
Wow, that's incredible.
And who wants to have a stab at how many captaincy days we've had so far?
Flipping heck. How many game weeks have we played? 23?
It's game week 23 coming up, isn't it?
multiply it by 3, so it's at 69.
And times it by a bit more though, because we've had all the extra days as well, haven't we?
It's pretty good guess, Paul. 74 it is so far.
Go.
And how many do you think we've still got to come?
I'd probably go roughly the same, because I think there'll be some kind of spread out as well.
Yeah, I've tallied it. There's 63 still to come. I think we've got 27 to the end of March, 28 in April and May game weeks, because I think there'll be 4 in the weekend rounds and 3 in the midweek round. Then you've still got 2 for the EFL Cup finalists to be rescheduled.
Yep.
There'll be 4 for the FA Cup semi-finalists to be rescheduled, and 2 for the FA Cup finalists to be rescheduled. And they'll all go on their own days. You can guarantee that for TV. So for percentage-wise, we've still got 46% of the possible captaincy days to come.
While we're on that, I've got a question, and it was a question we had earlier on Twitter as well, and it's around spreading the risk around your team. You know, in terms of covering teams in your overhaul team. You know, to kind of make sure that we've more or less got captaincy in place for the vast majority of the games. What are your thoughts on that, Ian? Is this a season to try and cover maybe and just think, for example,
I think it will depend on how many transfers you've got left to use.
Yeah, that's a good shout. What about the kind of average, say 15 or 16?
What,
maybe
15 left?
Yeah.
What I'd be looking to do is maybe plan as far ahead as I can, and maybe take in at least those that have got 2 captaincy days. There might be a fixture where there's one, and you think, well, say it's Fulham v West Brom, for example. I don't think that is one, but just as an example, you might think, well, I'll give that one a swerve.
Yeah.
But if it was, say, I don't know, Leicester against Southampton, for example, you might think, well, I could get a decent player, give them the armband, and they might do well in a couple of fixtures around it as well. So I think when you're looking at your overhaul team, you probably need to be looking 6, 7, 8 players that you want to keep, and then maybe 3, 4 or 5 that you can move around with the armband and the fixtures and the form. But it's definitely an opportunity now to try and get a plan where it'll take you as deep into March as you can. You're not going to get another opportunity to do it as you can now. So if you've got 15 transfers left, and we've got 3 months, February, March, April and May, maybe make a plan so you can use 5 in February and March, 5 in April and 5 in May, something like that.
Dan,
and always look to have your plan so you've got your money in place, so you're not going to use one of Paul's Blet Noirs, two transfers for 1 player.
What do you think about that, Dan, around like spreading the risk around your team? So I'm thinking of players, I don't know, maybe Arsenal, Leicester and Chelsea, just for example, and maybe teams that you may not, start with if they haven't got captaincy requirements, but in all likelihood you may need them further down the line. So I'm thinking of players, I don't know, maybe like Barnes or Justin or Saka or Jorginho or Werner or someone like that. Would you look to get them in place even if they didn't have captaincy days or not, or would you just target the actual fixtures we know?
So hard, right? Because obviously I looked at we've got to 28th of February, haven't we, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I looked at all them and thought, I can make a team, everything will be covered there. But then I don't go into it too much. But what Ian's sort of predictions, and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do for that if that happens? Do you know what I mean? So would I start with a Brighton keeper? They got some good games, haven't they? Villa, Palace, West. So do you think, do I start with him for 5-6 game weeks time? Do you know what I mean? Or do I bring him in? There's so much to think about. But yeah, I did see it on Twitter. I can't remember who it was, but someone put they were going to make a team that was going to have 3 Man City, 1 Villa, 1 Leicester, and they were going to spread it around. I'm like, that is quite a good idea. I might do that in one team, I think, spread it around. But then I was thinking today, I don't have a Chelsea defender. And then I was thinking, I would have loved to have a Chelsea defender today because it looked like a certain clean sheet and pass and bonus. And you think I'm sitting there with 3 Man City, and you're like, I just would have, and that would have been handy against Spurs on Thursday as well. So, in answer to your question, I don't know. It's so hard, isn't it? Man City, I felt you just had to jump on Man City, and that has paid off because they got how many clean sheets in the last 6 in the last 7 or something, haven't they? So that was right to jump on the Man City, but I don't know. Yeah, I do think spreading it around could be good, especially with that that tricky FA Cup game week coming up that might really benefit you.
How about you, Paul?
There's a bit of a clue. Andrew. There's a bit of a clue you can use as well. The chances are that the teams in the Europa League will be scheduled for Sunday and Monday, probably mainly Sunday. So if you compare 2 or 3 of those, then you're always going to have that day covered because they're all going to be scheduled on those days.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. How about you, Paul? Have you got any strong thoughts either way on it?
Something that I was going to say, and it kind of correlates to what Ian said there as well, is that if I was going in with 15 or 16 transfers, knowing how much is left, I think a common trap is to plan a transfer. So after game week 2, after the overhaul, I know that I'm going to plan to take X player out after the Saturday and bring X player in on the Sunday. I wouldn't be planning any of those moves. So, for example, the Brighton Crystal Palace game is a single game day. I wouldn't be planning to take out someone to bring someone in that game if I really wanted someone for that game. The good thing is that, particularly with Brighton, is that the team's pretty settled, so that you can pick someone that, unless barring injury or suspension or something, there's like 6 or 7 of those players that you know is going to be playing. So I just would either choose to avoid it or get the player in at the start. Don't plan a transfer for something 2 or 3 game weeks in, because the landscape's just changing every week, and we just.
Do you think that rate of change will slow down a bit now, Paul? Obviously, we've been playing twice a week since the week before Christmas, and now they're going to go back to playing once a week, with some clubs only once a fortnight.
Yeah, well, I think Man City ones, there's more of an unknown with Chelsea, because they heard the rumours that Tuchel prefers to rotate, and we've perhaps not seen it as much as what we might be expecting when European football kicks in. But particularly with Man City, they've had such an easy run of fixtures that they've been able to drop a player here and drop a player there, and you know that the players were constantly picking up passing bonus. So if I brought in Stones or Cancelo and I knew that they were playing 2 out of 3, that's still a good transfer, because you know that they're picking up passing bonus and clean sheets in the 2 games that they start.
Whereas they're playing 2 games in most weeks as well, aren't they?
Yeah. Whereas that might be different with European competition coming up. The rest might happen in the Premier League, and the Premier League games seem to be harder. They're on a harder run than they once were, so the passing bonus might not be guaranteed. So weighing up that, I think there is some more unknowns. And we've seen how quickly everybody wanted to get on Liverpool defence. It seems like an eternity ago, because that many games have been played, but in reality it was only 3 or 4 weeks ago. And Liverpool had a nice run. I think it was West Brom, Newcastle. There was someone else that the defenders tend to pick up passing bonus against, and that and then within 2 games everything changed and it was all about City, and I think that could happen again.
Cool. Okay, Ian, we got your next graphic up
Okay.
now.
So this is the last week that's currently scheduled for. So it's the week at the end of February, start of March, and you can see the games in green at the top of the graphic. They're already confirmed, and that finishes on Monday, 1st of March, with Monday night football game, Everton v Southampton. Now, the following week is going to be some rearranged games from those teams that have reached the FA Cup quarterfinals. Now, the FA Cup 5th round takes place this coming midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So by the time we get to Overhaul on Saturday, we should have a better idea of which teams and which games are going to be played in this midweek, even if we don't know for certain which days they're going to be on. But I've taken a bit of a bookie's interest, if you'll call it, and worked out the favourites and the lesser favourites of who's going to go where. So I think Manchester City v Wolves will be played on Tuesday, the 2nd of March. And the reason being that they both play on the previous Saturday, so they can get a Tuesday game. Then on the Wednesday, I think we're going to get Burnley v Leicester, Crystal Palace v Manchester United, and Liverpool v Chelsea. If Brighton beat Leicester in the Cup, then we could get Brighton v Newcastle instead of Burnley v Leicester. And if that's the case, it will be played on the Tuesday, because again, both Brighton and Newcastle play on the previous Saturday. And if West Ham beat Manchester United, then it won't be Crystal Palace v Manchester United, it'll be West Ham v Arsenal. Now, the Tottenham v Southampton and the Aston Villa v Everton that I've provisionally put in for the 4th of March on the Thursday is a lot more tricky, because Everton and Tottenham, they have additional Premier League games to rearrange too, not just the ones that are going to be due on the FA Cup quarter-final weekend. But if it does pan out that Tottenham play Southampton and Villa play Everton, then they will be on the Thursday, because both Everton and Southampton play the previous Monday.
I suppose just an initial observation there, obviously from a positive view, is all those days seem quite easy to cover without having to really think kind of out of the box in terms of captaincy there. You know, you've got City,
you would
Liverpool,
expect we'd have
Chelsea,
players from
Spurs,
each team,
Villa.
wouldn't we?
Exactly. So, you know, I think that's a nice start. Definitely.
Okay. So then that brings us on to the following week, i.e. the next weekend. So that's game week 26. Now, if it appears that West Ham and Leeds don't play the previous midweek, then that looks to be a prime game that could be scheduled for a Friday nighter. No guarantees, of course, but it's one where there's the possibility of both teams could play on a Friday. And if they want a Friday game, then they'll probably get one. If we remember back to when the European games were being played in October, November and December, they had a plan really of doing a Friday night game, 4 on a Saturday, 4 on a Sunday and a Monday night game. And if that didn't quite go to plan, sometimes there's 2 games on the Monday with an early kick-off and a late. But those that are in the Champions League always seem to play on a Saturday and a Sunday. And those that were in the Europa League always seem to play on the Sunday, possibly the Monday. So the other big thing with this weekend is it's the Manchester derby, and that will almost certainly be moved to the Sunday. And then we think Sheffield United v Southampton and Tottenham v Crystal Palace could be moved to the Sunday because they'll have played the previous Thursday. So that then leaves 4 games on the Saturday: Brighton v Leicester, Burnley v Arsenal, Liverpool v Fulham and West Brom v Newcastle. And the games that I think have got a chance of being played on the Monday, the 2 bigger games, would be Villa v Wolves or Chelsea v Everton. And then also that week, because Manchester City aren't playing in the Champions League, I think there'll be another game scheduled of their outstanding matches. And it looks quite likely to me it'll be Manchester City v Southampton. And if that's the case, it'll be played on the Wednesday.
Well, and again, all fixtures which you should probably have captains for. There, you know, as long as you've got a Villa player, a City player, maybe a Spurs player, Leeds player, you're pretty golden there, aren't you? But that's pretty epic planning area, to be fair.
We're only just getting started.
Just getting started. We'll go on to the next one. Oh, hang on, sorry.
So if we go on to 27, we're starting a Saturday here. So Manchester City have to play on a Saturday because they're playing in the following Tuesday in the Champions League. So if Arsenal, Leicester, Manchester United and Tottenham, they could have all played in the Europa League matches the previous Thursday. So they're likely to be playing on the Sunday. And the Arsenal v Tottenham North London derby will almost certainly be the 4:30 kickoff on the Sunday. Now, even if some of those teams get knocked out of the Europa League, then the chances are these matches will have been scheduled already, so they'll still be played on the Sunday. Now, that gives me 2 games that I think are probably the pick of the rounds for Friday and Monday, if they want to do them, which are Newcastle v Aston Villa and Southampton v Brighton. And the chances are, if the Southampton game is played the previous week against Manchester City, then they won't get a Friday, they'll get the Monday game. So I think that's how that'll pan out.
Fantastic.
So that could be one for either your Brighton keeper or Southampton. Sure. If that's going to be another single game day. They have won the 2 weeks previous against the Leeds. So that's maybe a good idea to get a Southampton player in.
Before Ian goes on to 28, oh my God, wait till you see 28 fixtures.
Oh yeah, flipping out, just see them now. Go on.
Okay, so move on to 28. And the first thing to notice, there's not many fixtures there. And now that's because most of them have been moved to game week 25 because it's the same weekend that the FA Cup quarterfinals are being played.
So this is the fabled blank game week 29.
This is your blank game week.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. And the only match that's guaranteed to be played at the minute that week is Fulham v Leeds. Yeah. Now, the ones that I've put in, Brighton v Newcastle, West Ham v Arsenal, and West Brom v Everton. The Brighton v Newcastle could be Burnley v Leicester. And the West Ham v Arsenal could be Crystal Palace v Manchester City. The West Brom v Everton is a bit of a punt because Everton have got fixtures all over the show.
Yeah.
And the only other thing to note on that week is there won't be a Monday game because it's the international break that follows it. And if one of the FA Cup quarterfinals is scheduled to be on the Friday night, which it could be if it's a BBC game, they like a Friday night game. And if that's the case, then there won't be a Premier League game on the Friday. So we might just have 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, or 1 and 3 or 3 and 1.
Is anyone else looking forward to the international break, or is it just me who's completely exhausted from all the football?
The first time Scotland's qualified for a European Championship, and I'm not that interested in international football.
Brilliant.
Well, it's not the first time since '96.
Yeah. Okay, Ian, I've gone on to the graphic now, which shows all the fixtures.
So this is the calendar.
Yeah.
And again, this is another tool that's available on the planning spreadsheet on the hub. And it's a way of looking over a certain period of time as to who's got fixtures, against whom, and on which day. And I've put on there in the yellow font, for those looking at the YouTube, are the matches that are the predicted. Those that are in the blue font, they're the ones that are currently scheduled. And then I've done the same for game weeks 26 to 28. And just something to note, the one where I've put Aston Villa v Everton for the 4th of March, there is a possibility that game could be played the previous week if they want to do something else with either Villa or Everton in game week 25, because that could be played on the 23rd, 24th, or even the 25th of February, because we've got the precedent now where they are scheduling Premier League games against Champions League games, whereas that never used to happen. But there's 2 that are already set to go against them, so it could happen. So then we go to the fixture counts tab. So this is an update with all of the projected fixtures, and you'll see who's got how many games now. And you'll see that those at the top are Everton, Manchester City and Southampton with 8. And those bringing up the rear, only with 5, is Crystal Palace and Sheffield United. So the Brighton v Crystal Palace game day, if you're taking a punt on a Palace player, great, you might have them for a captain, but you're only going to get 4 other fixtures within that time frame. So you might be better off having a Southampton or a Man City or an Everton player.
Well, it lost their appeal now that Mitchell lost his place, because at the price of him, he might have been someone that people would have went for.
I doubt anybody's going for Guaita in goal again, are they?
Or Patricio, for that matter. But that is absolutely incredible work, Ian. For those watching, I'm sure you want to rewind a little bit, kind of watch it again at some point. I certainly will be, because it takes a bit of work to get your head around. But what it basically does, it plans out from next weekend, which is the first weekend after the overhaul, right through to the international break towards the end of March. About half of it is confirmed fixtures, and the other half, are kind of Ian's thoughts. And Ian was bang on. I think you had 100%, Ian, with your February planning. Was that right?
Yeah.
100%. In terms of planning your team out, you can probably use this planner to more or less, plot your team until the
like I say, we should have some more info before the overhaul.
Yeah.
We won't know the days, but we should know the teams.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, yes, because the FA Cup games are this week, and that has a big
because the FA Cup's finishing on Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah. And is the planner, in terms of your projections, kept updated, Ian, on your Fantasy Football Hub planner?
Yeah, it's up to date, and every time there's a confirmed fixture change, then I'll do an update and let everybody know.
Glenn Murray just said that sobered me up, Ian. I think he was he was on the Buckfast or the Buckfast, so I think that sobered him up. Straight away then, Ian, what are your, because obviously you have gone through this probably more than us at the moment. What are your immediate takeaways for what that means?
It looks like you need to load up on City.
City have got more fixtures than anyone else.
They've got more
Volume,
fixtures.
right?
They're playing the best. They're getting the most points. And, I mean, what's not to like?
Yeah. The Brighton keeper for me is something that,
Brighton keeper
jumps out a little bit because of the fixtures and
the price.
Yeah.
And if you get 2 game days out of him and he's scoring well in the others and he enables something else, then it's a good one. And the idea with if you load up on the players that you're going to keep, then you should have a rough idea of how much money you've got left. Then you can work out which ones you want to fit in your team for the rest of it. Yeah,
I think we touched on it very, very briefly last week as well, but it is worth pointing out as well, especially for City and potentially for Spurs, who are a couple of the teams that you're likely going to want coverage from. If Man City and Spurs do win their FA Cup games this weekend, it means they have more fixtures in the short term, but it means in the kind of second half of this second overhaul, they will have less Premier League fixtures because their fixtures are now being moved. So their Carabao Cup rearranged fixture will be in this kind of initial block, won't it? In this kind of first half of the second overhaul, and their FA Cup quarter-final rearranged game will be as well. So
that'll be early,
So it's worth noting that the reason Man City...
You can load upon those early, and then if then you want to move off them, you can.
And as well, you've got to expect, especially after the result earlier, that City will probably win the league now. And, if we go by previous seasons where City have played like this, they generally win the league by some game week 34 or something like that. If we are thinking of getting off City players, they obviously blank in that game week 33, which is the Carabao Cup final. They will also blank in 29. So actually, they will only have, what would that be, 8 fixtures in the final 10 game weeks. And you can probably expect a fair bit of rotation at the back end of that as well, because, they're going to want to share out the medals and whatever else. So load up in City at the
5
start.
or 6 now,
exactly.
then you can only keep, say you might only want to keep 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly that.
And it might be like Diaz and maybe Rodri, and the rest you can be more expendable.
Agree. And if City go far in the Champions League, as well, then they could be resting their teams in the league to go for the Champions League. If they get to the semis and that, for example.
I think we have.
Oh, me? Am I back?
The fixtures are blown his computer.
Oh, am I back?
We talked about this last week, Dan. Is it me or you that's going to be the
Here he is.
Am I back? Am I back?
You are back.
Oh, bloody hell. So I was just talking about the Champions League as well. If they go far in the Champions League, then you probably expect them to play their strongest team in the Champions League as well. In the semis, whatever.
To be fair, the second team's not bad, is it?
No, it's not. It's not at all. Paul, what are your takeaways from Ian's immediate work there?
Well, me and Liam Dorrian made a pact earlier on that we weren't getting Ben White in, so that's the first thing that I need to be held accountable for. I had a sneak peek at yesterday, and hence why I focused on Brighton when I was looking at my player predictions today as well. I obviously knew they had that single game day against Crystal Palace coming up, but looking the longer term, I've seen that there was a potential for 2 more. Use the word strongly, potential for 2 more, but they do have that single game there as well. So Brighton, it's finding that balance in the Man City. And I know there'll be a lot of questions around this, like finding the right balance of the City players is going to be the most important thing, because of the volume of fixtures that they've got. You can't go and bear on City, but at the same time, if you have got if you're having to preserve transfers, because there's going to be all these potential single game days coming up, and that's a great stat about the 46%. It was 46% of captaincy days.
Days still to come. Yeah, 41% of the fixtures and 46% of the game days.
Yeah. So I think that's crazy when you felt like when considering like what you mentioned earlier on, Fergie, about some disdain at our comments around transfer preservation. But so that's it. Like just finding that City balance, and then maybe taking one or two of those City players out to pick up the future captaincy days on the days that haven't been covered. I think is going to be the most important thing.
I think my biggest takeaway of the whole thing, Andrew, would be to wait until Thursday night, Friday, when we've got more confirmed. You can make your plans, but it could go up in smoke, depending on the result. And I think the biggest one is probably Everton v Tottenham, and we might not know straight away which games they want to schedule. We'll know which teams can play and can't play, but we might not know which game they want to schedule straight away, because it's tricky.
Yeah, because they've already got the two cancelled games.
Because they've got cancelled games to rearrange.
Yeah.
I think the ideal thing for the Premier League would be if Tottenham v Aston Villa could be played on the fabled game week 29. Even though it's not scheduled there, if it could be fitted in there, then it makes everything so much easier. But I think that's only about a 15% chance.
And Dan, have you got any takeaways from Ian's presentation?
Yeah, well, because he was kind enough to send us this yesterday. I was up to at least 1 o'clock last night looking at him till like brain couldn't take anymore. But yeah, I was, when you say about the Brighton and thinking, God, and like this, I know he said, this game week 28 is because it's dependent on who goes through in the cup and stuff. But and I know he's been 100% right. But oh my God, if that game week 28 turns out right, that's going to be rough, innit? Because I said, well, if you've got the Brighton, keep you all right. But yeah, Brighton v Newcastle on a one day. I don't know, even West Brom versus Everton, do you know what I mean, on the Monday, you're thinking, oh my God, am I going to end up skipping 2 out of the 4 days? Or
you just know in 4 weeks' time that Sanchez is going to be added to the list of Guaita and Rui Patricio, don't you?
That's it, yeah. What are we doing with this keeper in our sides?
First rule of Sky Fantasy Football, don't make transfers on keepers unless you own one of these 3.
We got a question off Stephen Coulter. Dan, when does the overhaul start?
When's the overhaul start? Get off the stream.
And you need to watch your back when it comes to Glenn Murray and David Jack, because they tell him to ask you or to drop you a DM and you'll let him know. So if anyone wants to know when the overhaul starts,
can you send DMs off on Twitter?
Just drop Dan a DM. Just slide into Dan's DM and ask him.
Oh dear, mate.
I think the things I've taken away, and definitely some, kind of a learning from the first half of the season. Remember when we've all been here, right? You get like a crappy fixture on Friday night. I remember, who was it? Newcastle, when we were on about Wilson and all that, right? And
as if you've forgotten.
Yeah, I know. and at the time, it seems like a season-defining decision. You're like, if I get this wrong, I could be out of the running. I could lose my mini leagues, whatever else. One fixture in isolation, even a missed hat trick, right, is not the end of the world. So I think, a couple of things which I'm taking away personally. So I'm probably a bit lower on you guys than transfers. I've got 15 left now. I have got another 40 that will come week on week. Obviously, as everyone knows. But I think for me, it's going to be don't focus on these really, crappy captaincies, because if we look at City, for example, right, Gundogan, Rodri, Diaz, if you look at players like Martinez, look at these really consistent players who regularly rack up really good scores week on week, like 3 weeks out of 4, they just score really well. Even someone like Bamford, just as an example, all these players do really, really well and score lots of points. I think in terms of how I'll set my team out, and we'll move on to team structure in a second, but I think I'm definitely going to spread my team in terms of teams. Obviously, get 3 or 4 City in, but thinking, Brighton player, maybe the keeper, but Everton, Spurs, Everton have got a lot of fixtures in the short term. Spurs, Villa player, Chelsea player, Man United player, Liverpool player potentially. Just one from each of these teams that just sets my team up really, really well across the board, and then not get hooked into these. Oh my God, it's West Brom and Fulham. If I don't have a captaincy in for this game, it's gonna absolutely kill me, because it just doesn't, right? And I always go back to what Liam said in the in one of our pre-season pods, where he missed what was it, Aguero's hat tricks last season. He missed a lot of hauls, a lot of points. And if you look at every format, right, you don't have to nail every single captaincy to win the whole thing. No one can nail them all. So as long as you're there or thereabouts, and as long as you've got a strong team scoring you points consistently all the time, I think that's what I'm taking away, and is what important is to have those kind of players, in my team. But obviously looking at the fixtures, right? So we know that, Man City, Everton, etc., have got more fixtures than most at the start. So keeping an eye on that as well. About and I use this a lot in Telegraph and Dream Team. I always target volume of fixtures. It's not so prevalent usually in Sky, because Sky is only the Premier League, but in Telegraph and in Dream Team it includes things like FA Cup, and so I always target large volume of fixtures, and usually it pays off. So yeah, I think that's what I'm taking away there. In terms of team structure, then, so we've got millions of questions. I'll go through them the best we can. So this first question on team structure is off Mark Magpie Pal 37 and Stu FF, and it's a question around the structure of your team, maybe a formation where you think of spending your money. Ian, if I come to you first, have you got kind of any initial thoughts at all on a general structure of your Overhaul team?
Yeah, I've got a vague plan, and I've basically dumped some players in there that aren't going from it, and then tried to work around from there. So I started off Diaz at the back, Bruno in the middle, and Kane up front is where I started. I also put Salah in, and that only left me one striker slot, and that's where I've looked at the fixtures. And with Leeds having plentiful games and additional captaincy days, I've gone with Patrick Bamford. So that's basically filled my striker slots up, a good midfielder, a good defender, and then the rest I've sort of put together with a plan in place to give me enough money to get me KDB if I need him.
Cool. Okay. And what is that? A 4-3-3 or
3-4-3? I've got
3-4-3. Okay.
3-4-3, and I've got every captaincy covered, including my projections up until the end of March.
Oh, and you've got loads of transfers at the bank, Ian. It's probably worth noting as well. I'm just up to under the handy into workable. Right, okay. I can't remember what that is exactly, but I know...
It's 19, I think.
19. Exactly. Thank you, Paul. Ian's going to shoot you after him.
Well, no, he tweeted it anyway, so anyone that followed him would be able to go and catch it, I think.
Dan, have you got any initial thoughts on team structure?
I don't want to be locked into a 5-3-2 like I've just been, because I just went heavy on Man City, thinking, I don't mind being on a 5-3-2 because it's the Overhaul in a couple of weeks, and that'll be fine. And then Kane goes and gets injured, and Kane's going to miss some games apparently. And then I'm thinking, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to bring in Rudiger, Thiago Silva, and I'm like, I can't. Do you know what I mean? So I'm stuck with Son, who I didn't want, but that was the only thing I could do, which, But yeah, so that just shows that even with, a couple of games to go, once you're in a 5-3-2, it is stuck because your striker gets injured. You've got to bring in another striker, and there's no flexibility in it. So definitely trying to avoid that. But I'm open to anything like a 3-4-3, 4-3-3, whatever, really. But yeah, just don't get locked into 5 at the back.
Good advice there. Paul, team structure, any advice?
I don't know that it's advice. Just looking at the players that I'd want, I think there's so many strikers doing well just now. Watkins, Bamford, DCL, Kane. Well, Salah's not doing particularly well just now, but we know that at any moment
you need to be able to get to him. Is the point, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and I echo Dan's point. You couldn't play 5-2-3 anyway, but I wouldn't be getting locked into 5 at the back. So 3-4-3 or 4-3-3 is probably what I'll end up going with, I think.
Okay. Just to add to that, I suppose I'll probably be looking at a 4-3-3, or a 4-4-2, depending on exactly how it falls, because you can rotate, in between. In between the two, and it gives you the flexibility to kind of move around quite quickly without having to make the extra one, and to Ian's point and to Paul's as well, just around making sure that you've got enough money in the bank, probably still for the most expensive player in each position as well, because you don't want to be having to find funds to get to Salah, for example.
That's why if you went 4-3-3 as opposed to 3-4-3, I can't even remember. If you can play 3-5-2, I've never played 3-5-2.
Yeah, you can. I think.
Yeah. You can. Yeah. All right. Okay. So you could, because in that you could always move Kane or Salah back down to De Bruyne, I guess.
And the only other thing I would say is there is a trend of more clean sheets in the second half of the season, generally speaking, and this is because the bigger teams tend to just want to get their win, and the struggling teams tend to want to try and scrap out a kind of 0-0 and grab a point for survival. Sorry, I'm saying that they're the reasons that they're my thoughts, but it is proven that there are more clean sheets in the second half season than there is in the first.
Has any of you guys been on 3-5-2 at all this season? Then I can't have been, because I didn't even know that.
I don't think there's enough good midfielders.
No, there hasn't been either this year or last year, was there? We've been kind of trapped. It's ever since Mane and Sterling got classified as a strikers one, because they used to be midfielders.
And Salah as well. Salah was a midfielder.
Yeah. Okay, we had a question off FPL Heavyweights and Tom P. Sky FF around skipping single days. So Brighton and Palace, is probably an example of a confirmed fixture. Dan, I'll ask you this first. What are your general thoughts on skipping fixtures like that game? If you haven't got a player in,
it's I do find it tricky that this second half of the season, because at the start, you probably should have skipped that Southampton Newcastle, and you take a little drop. But now we're all sort of up, top 100-ish. Do you know what I mean? By not having anyone, you're potentially going to drop, sort of thing. So I don't think, half of me thinks now is not the time I want to be skipping days, because other people might, and that's where I can then start making moves. So I don't like to, but then when I do see some of the fixtures coming up, but then there's normally a solution in there, like that Brighton. What was the first Brighton one? Palace?
Yeah.
Brighton Palace.
Yeah.
So the Brighton goalkeeper, that'll do. Do you know what I mean? Like he'll cover that, and I don't know. It's so hard, mate. But I don't want to. I might, but I really don't want to, because every time you're missing a game day, you're obviously going down in the rankings.
Well, this is the chance you've got to actually make a team where you can cover them. When they start doing the fixtures in March and April, and you've already got your team, then you're a bit snookered. Yeah. If you haven't got one, you've got to get one if you want one. But now you've got the chance to put your team together where the plan's open in front of you. There might be a bit of guesstimation involved, but certainly the first 3 weeks you can't you? Because they're already there.
I think as well, another thing I would say is, when looking at a single day, is probably to stay off Twitter and actually look at the ownership of the players as well, because there are occasions where, if you look on Twitter, it seems that every single person is going for the same player. Actually, if you look at the ownership in the top 1,000, for example, of the key protagonists for that match, you may find that the highest owned player is under 10% owned. So even if it does kind of, even if that person does do well, your overall rank may not suffer. Or conversely, it may be that you look and everyone has jumped on Sanchez for Brighton and he's 60% owned. So that may help you kind of make your decision, maybe.
How much did Antonio go up by for that day when we all brought him back in?
He went from
phenomenal.
He went from 8% to nearly 50% in a couple of days, which is absolutely unreal. And Paul, in all fairness, Paul predicted it, and I said no chance.
I never went. And I never went for him.
And you never went for him. But you predicted him, in all fairness. I thought he'd go up to, I don't know, 15 or 20, but it's very rare you see someone go like that so quickly. But
you might find that later on in April and May, there'll be less chance of that if people have got no transfers left.
Yes, that's a really good point as well.
So that's where, I might be banging the same drum that I do all of the time. These transfers are a lot more useful further later in the season when nobody else has got them.
That's why it's hard to put when asked. I think traditionally we always said 10, 12, 15 points, that's what a transfer was worth. But it really depends on what point of the season that you're using them.
You're right. Okay, Leeds players. Rafinha, 6.8. Bamford, cheap as well. Dallas, 6.4, I think.
Harrison, 6.9.
Harrison, 6.9. Dan, if you had... Paul, come to you first. If you had to name a couple of Leeds players who are who you think will be the best pick or two going forward for Leeds, who would you pick?
Yeah, those four that we just mentioned.
One or two out of those four, then.
One or two out of those four. Well, if I continue on the way that I've been playing, Bamford will be the highest captaincy, and we know that they've got the 2 single game days now because
Southampton and Wolves.
Yeah, so Bamford will be the most captained on those 2 games, I think. Whereas just now it might have been Dallas, but I think with the Overhaul allowance, I don't get that. I've mentioned on the pod before, I don't get the non-love for Dallas at 6.4. I don't know what more you would want for a 6.4 million player, but he seems to be out of favour. He's not the Twitter choice. So I think that Bamford will be the most captained on those days. So I would say Bamford top. And then depending on your formation, I would pick one of Rafinha / Harrison or Dallas if you wanted the second one.
Dan, who are you got your eye on for Leeds players?
I can't really say anything different to what Paul said, really. Like, those 4 are the best picks, aren't they? Yeah. But yeah, Bamford, Dallas. I've had Dallas all season, and I don't know. Every time you sort of think they're getting rid, he pops up with a goal or something like that. And what more can you want for it? He plays every week. Do you know? I mean, in the past, when we've had players like Callum Patterson, I know he was sort of about 5.2 or something, but he wouldn't play, and he'd miss a couple of games. And do you know what I mean? So he's 6.4, and he plays every week. What more can you want? So he's still in my shortlist.
I think that Ayling has been unlucky not to get more attacking returns. He always seems to be kind of at the edge of the box on that right hand side. I don't think he's got any actually, or maybe 1 assist, but he's really good on bonus. I know he's more expensive, 7 million.
7, isn't he? Yeah.
He's probably someone I'd chuck in as well. Just in terms of, I don't think he's had any attacking returns yet, which I think he's probably due. Ian, anyone else from Leeds interest you?
No. I would definitely go Bamford because of what Paul says with the captaincy. If it's second choice, I'd go for Dallas just because you can always get an extra defender in and he's cheap.
Fair enough. Differentials next. So we had questions off John Maloney, FPL heavyweight, Glenroy as well around differentials. So Paul gave us 5 earlier, really, really good ones there. Ian, have you got any differentials?
I've picked a couple. First one, James Ward-Prowse. Less than 5% owned. Southampton good fixtures. And I think he's in the top 4 or 5 of the midfielders. And best of all, he is a good price that you can jump on and jump off. Yep. I think he's 8 points something, 8.2. Yep. So you've got the likes of Antonio, Mount, Gundogan. Any of those are all similar price. And the other one I like, and I can't pronounce his name, is the guy that starts with an A with plenty of syllables, playing at Fulham. Dirt cheap. 5.2, I think.
Oh, wow. By me.
And he's a central defender. So Fulham are improving. If you want somebody to enable the rest of your squad, I'm not going to say he's going to get bonus or clean sheets all of the time, but you can leave him in there. He's going to play. And if it enables you something else for your other 10, then it might not be a bad shout.
He came from Man City, didn't he?
He's on, yeah.
And they have the extra fixture early on, and the next 4 fixtures actually are Everton, Burnley, Sheffield United, and Palace. So the next 4 are really nice. After that, they have got Liverpool, City, and Leeds. But if you're looking to jump on someone early and cheap, those next 4 for him are really nice. And those 4 are include a double there as well, so you're getting the extra fixture there as well potentially.
I see if I can find his name.
It's something like Adina Bowie or something like that, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Dan, any differentials from you?
Thought you were going to ask me to pronounce that then.
You can't even pronounce Gundogan, so I won't ask you to pronounce that.
No, that's why I only pick players like Kane, Salah. Do you know what I mean? So I don't have to, it's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky. I was also thinking, during the overhaul time, did they update the percentage owned on the players? I can't remember if they do it day by day.
I don't think they do. Just from hearing a few whinges on the first overhaul, but
yeah, I don't know. I did put it out there the other night. Lingard, I fancy going to West Ham. Got 2 goals, did he? 7.2. I know their fixtures aren't great, but it's a 7.2 million. I don't think that's the worst shout. He probably won't score again now till the end of the season. Souček, only because I got him on my FPL team and he's sitting on my bench each week. But he's 7.3 million. Yeah. He scored 8 goals. Only 2 man of the matches.
Third highest scoring midfielder.
Wow.
Which surprised me when I checked it out.
But he's also in bonus. He's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. He's 12th on bonus in the last 6 game weeks as well.
But I like him. I know the fixtures aren't immediately great, are they, after the overhaul? But I don't. At the minute, he's not in many teams. Bear with me. 3.3. Well, 33 teams in the top 1,000. So he's not being picked much. But yeah,
do you think people will go for him instead of Antonio?
Antonio, it's just the injury problem with Antonio, isn't it? I could just imagine putting him in after the overhaul for, I think West Ham, is it the first Monday? Oh, you should get 1 game out of him, but you can just imagine he'll break down again, and then you're like, oh, I've got to use a transfer to take him out. And, at least Souček, he's played every game, any.
I mentioned on our WhatsApp group that when I brought him in for when Kane was injured, I think, and we all jumped on for that Tuesday, it was the ideal time to get him in. He'd got a captaincy, he was in form, he'd already had his injury, and you've only got to keep him a month.
Yeah, that was ideal. But I don't know if I'll start with Antonio, but you need a West Ham, I think, because that is it the 15th, isn't it? Sorry, let me quickly get it here. The 15th. Yeah, Monday the 15th.
Yeah, they play Sheffield United and
Chelsea play Newcastle. Yeah.
Could be it could be a funds thing, right? So if you're 0.5 or whatever, 0.6 short of Antonio, Souček could be a good replacement.
Yeah.
Norman, Conquest, Glenn Murray, and Phil have all asked a question about Souček's ban. It's got to be overturned, right?
Yeah, surely.
I think they normally do it on like a Monday or a Tuesday, don't they? So, I would plan with him. But obviously, if it's upheld, obviously go without. Steve Cheek, Adara Bioyu. Apologies if
no wonder I wasn't getting that right
again. He says that he's had him since December when Kilman was jousted, and he's had 23 points for Fulham in the last 6 games, which if you think of his price,
4 points a game for 5.2 isn't bad, is it?
Pretty good value there, absolutely. The only 2 I've had, I'm not even sure how differential they'll be, but I do think Jorginho, when he's in form and when a manager likes him, he tends to mop up passes. It looks like he's back on penalties. So he's taken 2 now under the new manager. Good for tackles, like we've seen earlier. Their fixtures are pretty decent as well. So I do think he could be a good shout, and he would also cover a Chelsea captaincy, either in the next month or 2 or later on down the line. And he's a pretty safe captain as well, because obviously when you're looking at defenders, if they don't get the clean sheet, they sometimes struggle for passing. When you're going for strikers, you're always looking for the goal, or shots on target bonus as an absolute minimum. With Jorginho, you should probably get passing the vast majority of the time. I'm getting a bit of a lesson off Glenn on how to pronounce it. Ada Dibiro. Apologies, Fergie on the end. I'm assuming he's calling me that, and that's not at the end of his name. Thank you for that, Glenn. And Phil says...
Would you go with... Oh, sorry, Fergie.
No,
carry on.
No, just Phil says, for West Ham, Kufal, still a shout. Obviously, really, really great value player. 6.1 is he, or something ridiculous like that? But he's been superb. He nearly scored yesterday, didn't he? And Phil's just stolen my thunder on my second pick, which was Saka. 7 million, incredibly cheap, looks absolutely fantastic, would cover a kind of rogue Arsenal captaincy, but scored a hell of a lot of points since he's got that run in the team. So very budget friendly. You can just kind of stick him in and forget about him, but I think it's a really good option.
Forget.
Remember earlier on the season, Konza was quite highly owned, and then everyone seemed to go really off him really quickly, and then Villa started keeping clean sheets again. 6.1, Villa's fixtures are excellent. They've got 2 rearranged games still that need...
Yeah, they've got quite a few games to rearrange.
Scheduled in, so there's no captaincy requirement as that we know, but
there could be upcoming.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about strikers and midfielders, so I guess the assumption is a lot won't be going without Watkins or Grealish. We've talked about goalkeepers covering like Ederson, Sanchez, other options. So Konza could be another going back as a...
Yeah, I think we're all going to need at least one cheap player. So you could go for Konza, Holding, Dallas, Vestergaard.
Yeah.
They're all sort of 6.1 to 6.6 or something like that. And I think we're going to need one. Yeah. And a bit like you said, Paul, pick one and keep with them.
Yeah.
So just...
I was sorry, mate. I was worried about Konza because at the start of the season, he got clean sheet goal, man of the match, didn't he? He got a big haul the first game. And I thought, oh my God. And then, there you go. I think, he then missed it?
The only thing you don't get with Villa is they're not great on bonus, are they?
I don't think he's got bonus once.
If you're getting them in for the price and the clean sheets, then you've got nothing to worry about, really.
A few thoughts in the chat. So Scott Baker asks us about Grealish. We'll move on to Villa next. Sean Thorpe says, tempted by an Edison punt, you get 8 games and then switch to Sanchez for the 2 Brighton single games in March. Maybe something to think about there. And Tom Hartnell says, Southampton have got all those games too. So looking on the screen, Southampton have got 8 games due to the doubles they've got as well. When Walker Peters is back, they're much more solid. And Tom says Vestergaard for me there. Touching on Villa, so just some names. So FPL heavyweight asked again, Villa assets. Grealish, Martinez, Konza, Watkins, etc. Dan, I come to you first this time. If that's okay. Who would your first choice Villa player be at the moment?
Probably Watkins at the minute. He's been getting a few goals. I've had Grealish the whole time. Grealish, but then he's getting an assist pretty much every other game, and he's got so many attacking returns. Any Grealish, I don't know. I think one of them. Don't know whether you want both, but if I was going for Villa, I'd be looking at one of those 2.
I think the only thing, if you go for Watkins, because I think he'd be my first choice, but that means you can't have Kane, Salah and Bamford, which is likely to be
it's filling up a slot, isn't it? In midfield, you can have up to 5.
Yeah, but I do think Watkins is good.
Grealish is the second highest scoring midfielder by a distance.
Apologies, Paul, what were you going to say?
Martinez as well, obviously. Hasn't let anyone down that's had him this season.
Certainly, he's been unreal. I think he's been a real difference maker in terms of I think that the people who didn't go for Martinez but have had the rest of the kind of the template can count themselves really unlucky actually, because he's probably scored 60 to 70 points more than Patricio, Guaita, whatever else, and overseas that's obviously a massive difference there. Paul, Villa. Who's your main man for Villa?
If I could have anyone in formation allowed, to have Watkins, but that might be a struggle with the other options up front. So Yeah, Grealish, Martinez. I had mentioned Konza because he's priced, but I think there's better budget enablers than Konza.
Okay, we've had a question around the makeup of a team. So if you're trying to chase a little bit, so a lot of our watchers and listeners are around about top 1K, and they really want to push on and try and get up into the top 200 or 300. What about some advice or some tactics on how to get there? And I suppose a corresponding question with this, Adrian Tor asks, how many differentials did you try and go for within your initial overhaul team? So Ian, I'll put you on the spot here.
Okay. I had a look at this question earlier, and my advice would be pick your team. Don't worry about whether differential or not. We've still got loads of time to get a differential. Loads of time.
Yeah, and sometimes a differential is actually going for the obvious pick sometimes, because other players around you are trying to be clever, aren't they? Which I know all too well.
I say anybody watching and listening to this, they're obviously clued into how it works. Make your plan now, and then when everybody else has gone for some differential picks in February and March, you can sweep up in April and May.
Nice. Anything different there, Paul?
No, just remember last season that if you had transfers later on, I think it was 3 game weeks to go, Antonio against Watford. It was against Watford, wasn't it? Norwich, sorry.
Cheers for that.
Oh, I rate Dan, you kick about in an Arsenal top half the time anyway, and Man City top. So that was a Scottish in me, wasn't it? No, but that was like, not a lot of people. His ownership wasn't particularly high, and then that was a chance, like 3 game weeks to go, and imagine like with 4 goals, a midfielder scoring 4 goals, so you get the extra point per goal as well. Captaincy opportunity, whereas not many people could have done it because of their transfer count.
I'll give you an example from last year. When we came back after the lockdown, I had 9 transfers left, I think, and I was in 1500th position or something like that. And I ended up in 156th.
Wow.
Just after the lockdown period.
There was extra transfers left at the end.
Just by having the transfers left.
Yeah, no, that's good. Anything else, Dan, in terms of tips? Do you kind of, you go along with Ian and Paul?
Yeah, Paul said it before, like having transfers is just a differential as well. Like, it really depends on your position now. Like, if you are a bit further back, then you feel you got to go for a differential and stuff. It's tricky. Do you know what I mean? Like when I won it, right, I was never checking really percentages. I was just sort of doing what was best for my team, having the best captain each day, making the moves I want, bringing in it's just obvious, but the form players and stuff like that. I didn't sort of worry what the percentages were, and I'd say most of the time the differentials are a differential for a reason, aren't they? Because, well, no one's got them, saying getting the points, or I don't know, but you're risking it. Last season when we came back, didn't have many transfers left. I made some gambles, went for like Rashford instead of Bruno. Did not pay off. Do you know what I mean? So whilst I was trying to get into the top 100 sort of thing, I finished about 400 because I wasn't doing the obvious. But just play your own game, really. It's even hard. Like I don't know if you are finding it. I would stay off Twitter sometimes because you'll end up sort of copying other people's moves, this, that, and the other. But you got to sit down, you like take all this on board, and then try to make your own plan and just do what's best for your team. I know it sounds really obvious, but that's what I try to do.
Okay, thank you for that, guys. So, question now on goalkeepers off Owen Jones. Goalkeeper shows, obviously, probably team dependent, captaincy dependent. After listening to Ian, I've got to be honest. Sanchez has jumped probably to the top of my list along with Edison. Martinez, has obviously been incredibly consistent for a really good price. Dan, come to you first this time. Have you got any other keepers in mind?
No, Edison, Sanchez. I did even look at Guaita, maybe for that Palace game, but he's got to keep a couple of clean sheets at some point. Do you know what I mean? So, do you know what I mean? If I get a bit of jam and no one's picking him because he's been terrible, get him in for like on that. If he keeps a clean sheet on that single game day and gets me a 20-point or whatever, be happy days. But no, I think I will put Guaita's on the shortlist. But him, Martinez, Edison. I think that's about it, really.
What about Pope?
Yes, I did. They've got a single game, don't they, Burnley?
Yeah, I think.
Or they got a couple of good
draft. Yeah.
The first 3 games are pretty good, aren't they? Palace, Fulham, West Brom. So yeah, but then I always say I hate to move keepers.
That's it, isn't it?
I had Martinez since the overhaul. I only put him into Ederson the last, 5 games or something because of Man City's, and it probably only got me an extra 20 points. I know it's still decent, but Martinez has just been doing the points. So I'm really against when people said, like, I don't know, they want to the 4th keeper and stuff. You're like, God, like I normally just pick one and stick with him, and that's it. But yeah, Pope is interesting. So maybe I'll add him to the list, but I then think the fixtures turned, don't they? I think they got the 3 good ones, and then I'm not so sure they're great after that.
They got Spurs, Arsenal, Everton, and Leicester next after that.
Yeah.
Then, so
I don't think Pope.
Paul, who is your keeper of choice at the moment?
Ederson or Sanchez.
Okay.
Mendy, maybe. I'm not considering him, but I could understand why people might go for Mendy.
Good price, 7 million.
7 million.
Yeah.
7. Yeah.
We've had a shout off Mike Nee for Leno, and Phil says Mendy for me has Chelsea covered, which you can't really argue with. If you're against that spreading the captaincies amongst your team. Ian, anything else on?
No, I would Ederson, Martinez, or Sanchez, and my way of looking at it: get the rest of your team in, and then pick the one you can afford.
Okay. Next, we've got essentials. So, question off FPL heavyweight and FPL off spinner. 3 essential players. Ian, I'll come to you first on this one.
Okay. Go on then. Defender, Diaz.
Yeah.
Midfielder, Bruno. And striker, Harry Kane.
I think you mentioned that at the start, didn't you, as the spine of your overhaul.
They were the first
team.
3 I'd put in.
Yeah. Paul?
Exactly the same.
Yep. Dan?
Yeah, I'll go the same as well. Keep it short.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think they're the 3 probably most obvious ones.
I bet if we look at the percentage on Saturday, they'll all be round about 80 plus in the top 1K. Probably 90 plus.
Yeah, I don't think you can argue they're probably season keepers, aren't they? And with Kane and Bruno with their prices as well, they're right at the top end in their position, and there's no point even really talking much more about essentials. Completely agree with that. We had a question off Ron around captain strategy, attackers or bonus magnets. Obviously, I think in the first half of the season, it was the attackers were seeming to get score nearly every game. We were seeing 1-2 goals, hat tricks at times. Salah, Vardy, Calvert-Lewin were scoring hat tricks. In the second half of the first half of the season, it's been more Diaz, Holding, Rudiger. Heartbreak for those of Rudiger this afternoon, but a lot of people have been looking to captain those more and more. What are your thoughts going into the second half of the season now in terms of targeting captains? Paul, first, are you looking more at bonus or are you looking more at those key strikers?
More defenders. I think just continuing with the way things have went.
Yeah.
If Leeds are playing and there's on a single game day, Ian made this point before when he was on the podcast that if you're picking teams that are attacking teams, pick their attackers, and if you're picking teams that are defensive teams,
that's a good point.
Or racking up the bonus points, then pick them. And we've seen a lot more of the defenders emerging recently, particularly with Man City. So Leeds have a couple of game days coming up, and if I owned Dallas and Bamford, I would captain Bamford in those. But where it's the big teams, I'd be going for defensive options for your Chelsea, particularly Chelsea and Man City. If Man United were playing, I'd probably still pick Bruno based on ownership.
Dan, anything from you? Anything different?
Yeah, do you know, that's why I love this game, right? Because today, I do the polls on Twitter and stuff. I can't, it's so hard to narrow down 4 best choices, isn't it? Like today, because, well, after you see the lineup, but you're having Kane, Son, you can go for a Chelsea defender because you're thinking they're going to get pass and bonus and a clean sheet. Do you, people are Man City defenders because they were going to get, probably clean sheet, pass and bonus. There's so many different ways to do it, isn't there? Like, it's just, that's why I do like it. But I do, like Paul and Ian said, it depends on the day, doesn't it? And I sometimes just look at the odds, to be honest, and see what is the most sort of backed in by the bookies sort of thing to happen. And I think if I'd had a Chelsea defender, I'd have probably gone for a Chelsea defender as captain today over Son, but Kane was back, so Son it was.
Bill Speck, crikey, it's 10:25. Loving the advice, but I should have bought more cider. I'm on empty. We did warn you. We did warn you. Time has gone by. Dan, I've just looked at the picture that you've drawn on me and put on Twitter. You absolute swine. If anyone's on Twitter at the moment, Dan has drawn me. I've only got one chin in this photo, which I'm quite pleased with. So thank you for that.
It's all right, isn't it? I'm going to sell that.
Yeah, in terms of cap, Ian, sorry, I haven't asked you. Have you got any specific strategy? Or
I would say you're going to pick the best player with the best fixture from your team. If you've got a choice of 2 and 3, then that's where you might think, if it's a tricky game, pick the defender for your passing bonus. If you think this is an easy game, then you might go for the attacking player for the goals and shots on target. But reasonably speaking, you're going to pick what you think is the best player with the best fixture on that day from your team.
Yeah, that's fair. I think my main strategy for the rest of the season is probably, we're likely going to have, let's just say Bruno, Salah and Kane and Bamford will probably be 4 that, a lot of teams will start off with. I probably might not sure on Salah at the moment, but I think it's going to be a bit more of where it lands within my team as well. If that makes sense. If I've got Grealish for Villa, I'll give captaincy to Grealish. If I've got a Chelsea defender and it's a Chelsea one, I'll go with that. So obviously building your team around that is obviously based on what you think are good captains for each as well. So it's going to be how it lands as well, if that makes sense. On the Brighton one, you're not going to bring in Mopai or Gross because you should already have a plan in place. Either you are going to skip it or you've gone for the keeper, for example. So try and not, after you've picked your team, not to let the captains dictate your moves unless it's part of your
it might become more tricky further down the line when we're fixtures get announced for April, say. It might be Hobson's choice. Might be the only one you've got.
It might, but I think also, then it's probably very few occasions where you would just pick in, a player for one fixture. You'd look at the run of fixtures, you look at the right time to put them in, to kind of maximise that, the extra fixtures, etc. But
that's where we go back to the old transfer trail, isn't it?
Exactly.
Same thing. Hopefully there'll be some of those coming up in April and May.
Okay, best cheap defender around the 6 million mark. This was off Ben McCrum, so he chucked in Dallas, Justin, Vestergaard. So we've mentioned Kufal, players like that. Ian, come to you first. Who is your favourite pick in that in that bracket? Holding maybe.
At the minute, probably Justin. Mm-hmm. It could be that you want to use that slot for a particular reason, and if that's the case, you might go for someone like Dawson, maybe for West Ham if they get a couple of fixtures. I wouldn't be too worried about who you get as long as you get one and keep with them.
Okay,
but pick them for the right reason.
Dan, how about you for that area?
I'm sick of James Justin, right? Because I didn't have him in after the overhaul because he's good. Pereira's coming back and he's going to be out of the team in a few weeks, and that's been half a season now. The ones we talked about, Dallas, probably Konza, but Paul's now maybe not think of Konza. I don't know whether you go for Holden or not now. It might be a risk. I just don't know. Arsenal one. I don't know. Holden's all right, 6.4 million, and he's been a hero. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't looked at too many of the cheap ones.
Luke Shillito says target, and Saif Ali asks if Justin will play when Pereira and Castagna are both fit. I think Justin is not far off being there, player of the season.
I think he'll take Fofana's slot.
Yeah,
they'll play 3-5-2.
Yeah.
Mike Neve says Vestergaard as well.
Yeah.
Paul, this is one of your areas, I think, isn't it? Who do you like?
Vestergaard would be mine as well. If I had to pick one, yeah.
And Southampton have got 8 fixtures as well in the short term with those extra games. I think their fixtures actually are nice. If I just read out their next few, they've got Wolves, Chelsea, Leeds, okay, and then Everton, Sheffield United, and then Brighton. So, certainly a chance of some clean sheets in there. Chris Port asks, is it worth leaving out injury-prone players? So he uses Kane and Vardy, as examples. Kane is probably less injury-prone than Vardy. I would say, you can maybe chuck Antonio in there. Any thoughts on just leaving those and going with other picks? Paul, any thoughts on those?
It's difficult, right? Because a lot of these players are going to be really highly owned, and I've got the fixtures, and hence the reason why you're picking them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I find it hard to answer because I probably will pick a lot of those players. Vardy's on my list never again, along with Zaha, Ben White. There's a few Rashford. There's a few others, but yeah, Vardy's joined that list for me.
Ian, anything from you there?
I think you'd be struggling to go without Kane.
Yeah, agree.
He's going to be highly owned, and with those captaincy days, even if it's not single games, he's going to be on the Sunday or the Monday. You're going to want him as an option. Vardy, I could go without. Antonio, I could probably go without. But you've got to be prepared that sometimes you're going to get kicked by it.
And asking a question on a similar vein, this is off Heskebo. Popular players we can do without. So this is quite a hard question, obviously, because popular players are popular because they are the best picks. What about popular players we can do without? I'll check, on current form and fixtures, actually, for, looking at Liverpool's next few games. They've got Leicester and Everton next. They've then got Sheffield United and Fulham, and then they've got Wolves and Chelsea. But I don't know, maybe I chuck Salah in the mix at the moment. There's maybe someone, just the whole team looks off form. I think he's got 2 returns in the last 7. I know that, past performance doesn't necessarily indicate future, but that's maybe someone I would potentially.
If you're going to go without him, Andrew, would you have a plan to get him in?
I'd have enough budget to have him, to be able to get to him in one move, yeah. So, if I could say, for example, go with Kane, Calvert-Lewin and Bamford, because obviously Everton have got those extra games. I think they've got a captaincy day, as well.
There's a possible one, yeah.
Just as an example, right? But I'll make sure I'd have enough budget left to go from Calvert-Lewin up to Salah.
Any other? Play Southampton on Monday Night Football.
Okay. Any other, likely popular players that you think that you may not go with?
Open forum.
Yeah.
Antonio for me. I think a lot of people's going to be blinded by that Monday, the 15th of February fixture. Home to Sheffield United looks a plum fixture, which it is. Ideal captaincy on that day, but West Ham are unlikely to get the extra game. If Man United put West Ham out, I think that West Ham will only have a single in those rearranged games, and their fixtures aren't great after that. I won't mention his injury record because I don't want to play on that, because that's to say that I'll never get him again, which isn't true. But Antonio I think will be popular, and I think that I'm going to avoid him.
Okay. Anyone down at all?
Vardy, never having him again, ever. I'm debating De Bruyne, whether, before he got injured, it was like, God, he's just not doing anything. You kept captaining him over a Man City defender and he weren't doing anything, and so annoying. But then, he can then pop in a 20-pointer. So depends, like I say, when he's due back and stuff like that. With the amount of games Man City you got, I just don't know. It'd be a risky one not to have. Popular ones, I just won't be having Vardy. I'm trying to think else popular. I think all the other ones they're just going to be in there, aren't they? Kane, Bruno, even Grealish, I think, will still be popular. So just definitely not Vardy.
So while we're on De Bruyne, we had a specific question of FPL heavyweight and Luke NDN, KDB or no? And obviously, really, really good question. Really interested. I think at the moment he's due back roughly around Sky Game Week 26, and that is right in the middle of the Champions League ties they've got coming up as well. Ian, what do you think about KDB?
Yes, you'd want him. No, you can't start him. So leave enough money to get him if you need him. There's enough value players in the game that you don't need to spend all the cash.
Yep, I agree. Paul, any thoughts on KDB?
Yeah, what Dan and Ian said. Not really got any different opinions to those.
I think the thing I would add is, I've always been a massive fan of KDB in Sky, but since he's changed positions and he's not getting the passing bonus, I think that actually hinders him an awful lot. He's got to get attacking returns now, and he's not a good striker, and he doesn't score many goals. So I personally probably won't be looking to get him back in. If you look at Gundogan, Rodri, Diaz, Gundogan especially, actually, and you can say that Gundogan has stepped up before KDB was injured, but Gundogan was playing very well before KDB was injured. I think that Gundogan at what is he, over 3.5 million less, can actually match him for points for the rest of the season.
You say he's not doing very well, Andrew. Guess where he is on my list when I did the update on Friday. So not including this weekend. Guess where he's ranked in points for midfielders?
Oh, no.
De Bruyne.
Guess where he's ranked?
Yeah.
I don't know, but with you saying that, I'm not sure.
He's not. He's fifth.
Is he?
Fifth most points for midfielders, and that's having been out of the game for a month.
How many points is he on?
When I did this on Friday, he was on 113.
Right, 113. But then you have to, you have to consider the PPM, don't you? There, in terms of the money you're saving. How many is Bruno on?
176.
Yeah, 184 now.
And I don't know off the top of my head, but if you're looking at players like Gundogan, Saka, not Antonio as such, but there's the other options we've mentioned, Grealish, and the other mids we've mentioned. I think you can.
Oh, there's plenty of options there.
Probably
there's plenty.
You can probably shed him and use the change elsewhere on your team, personally. But if he comes back, and if he comes back and smashes it, then that. But I just can't see it because they will have won not won the league. They've more or less won the league, Champions League season. I just can't see him coming in every game and playing 90 every game. And I just don't think playing the position that he has this season that he's that good a value as he has been in previous, because he's not getting the passing bonus, which he's always smashed every season. That's one of his massive attractions. I think if you look at the City team in terms of where he finishes in terms of passes amongst the outfield 10, and you can probably include Ederson in this as well. Actually, he's definitely in the bottom half in terms of passes. And I don't think, I'm not sure, but I'd be surprised if he's hit passing bonus more than once or twice a season, I would guess. But anyway, that answers the KDB one. So I'm a no. The other three are a maybe. If you fancy him, get enough cash for him. Number of City players. So we had a question off Mark McFadden and Stephen Wright. So how many City players are we looking at for the teams at the start? So I'll start off. So I haven't answered one yet. In my current draft, I think I've got 3 or 4, depending on whether I go for Ederson or Sanchez. I think at the moment we're probably looking at Diaz, Cancelo, and Gundogan. 3. I'm probably definitely looking at maybe Ederson, but obviously depending on the rest of my team. you can save a couple of million and cover the Brighton captaincy by going for Sanchez. So they're my current thoughts. Dan, what are your thoughts on City at the moment? Are you going all in, or are you balancing it?
I think the same as you, mate. I think 3, whether I start with Edison or whether I go for the Brighton keeper, really depends. Like then I say, if I'm not going to have De Bruyne, I can have Edison in because I won't need to save that money. So, but then I will need to cover that game. So I think 3. I don't want to get stuck into him and then have to make loads of moves to get him out when like they miss games and rest them, use and plays in the Champions League and stuff. So yeah, I think 3 would be safe. Just know they'll probably get a couple of clean sheets in the first few weekends. And they're going to be dropping down the table because everyone's got 4 or 5 or something like that. So yeah, still undecided, but yeah, I definitely think 3.
Paul, what do you think on City?
4 or 5, I think I'll have, and I think 4-ish will be the average. I think.
Okay, and Ian?
Yeah, between 3 and 5. I've currently got 4. I think I've got Diaz, Cancelo, Gundogan, and Rodri.
Good stuff. Okay, we're on to our last few questions, gents. We've broken the record for the longest podcast we've done, but I was determined to get through all the questions that we possibly could. Soyuncu. Is Soyuncu, and obviously this is off Sky FFT, is Soyuncu an option now that Fofana's out? And well, he was a legend last year, wasn't he? Ian, thoughts on Soyuncu?
Not for me. If I was going Leicester, I'd go Justin for the price or Pereira for the opportunity.
Any love for Paul or Dan for Soyuncu, or are there better options?
I think he's too much money now, isn't he? I was going to get his price up, but last season he was like 6.4 when he or 6.2. So
he's 8 point something now, isn't he?
I'm going to get him up.
He's 8.3.
Yeah, 8.3.
Yeah. Which, when like Fergie, you and Ian, when you're naming your Man City players, there, neither of you named John Stones, and John Stones is
same price as
Soyuncu. Definitely, I think. I'm not putting words in either of your mouths, but I think that you would rather have Stones over Soyuncu for that price.
Absolutely.
Questions off Rab K and Phil Hurst around Chelsea. So Hudson-Odoi, Werner, Rudiger, Mendy, Azpilicueta. Favourite Chelsea? I know it's quite hard at the moment, obviously, because we're not sure. But he did say, I watched the start of the game actually, and the manager did say that he was giving Alonso a rest because he didn't want him to play 3 games in a week, which would probably indicate actually that he fancies him, as his starter in that position. Are any of you, Ian, any of you got any special eyes on any Chelsea players? Dan, what about you?
I'd like them to have had a couple more games really before you had to sort of pick someone. But defence I'd be looking at really. It's just then sort of trying to, like, Zuma's gone, I think he's not going to be anywhere near that starting 11, I think. So I don't know. I like Silva, but I know he went off, didn't he, the last game, and he's a bit older sort of thing, whether he can play every game, whether he get rested for Champions League and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm mainly looking for defence for Chelsea. I'm not really looking at mids or strikers.
Any specific one?
Just trying to work out who's sort of nailed in there, Azpilicueta or like Alonso, like you just said, like you might be ahead of Chilwell.
Dan, what about Reece James?
I had him earlier in the season and didn't go well, so I'm reluctant to go there again.
Ian, anyone from Chelsea catch your eye?
If I was going for the one that was most nailed at the minute, it'd probably be Asby. But if Reece James gets that spot, he's cheap enough to give it a go. At the minute, I don't think I'm going to bother.
And Paul, what about you?
If I was picking one, it'd probably be Azpilicueta as well. I think that I would predict if they went to a back 4 that he would prefer Azpilicueta at right back than he would to Reece James at right back. And Azpilicueta is suited to playing in a back 3 as well when he's playing when he's playing 5 at the back or 3 at the back. So yeah, Azpilicueta, I think.
I think I agree with Azpilicueta and Reece James. Though, as I mentioned before, I do think Jorginho, if he keeps his spot, could be a good pick. centre of the park there. Budget players. We touched on budget defenders. This is the last question around Sky anyway. This is off Reese Sky FF. Budget players. So we touched on defenders. Any other budget players, across the game really, that you think would be worthy of consideration? Paul, have you got any other, other than any we've mentioned already?
I think I've exhausted my.
Well, you are exhausted, or you've exhausted them?
No, yeah. I think we've talked about this 3 times now. I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Dan, anyone we haven't mentioned?
Don't think so. I'm going to put an article out on the Hub this week, so I don't know when, Wednesday or something. That'll give you plenty of time before the weekend. So I'll put a load of stuff on there. Like we talked about some other stuff. So look to the Hub for midweek.
And Ian,
I'll give you a budget one that's probably won't be considered budget, but Bamford, 8.2.
Yeah,
it's certainly budget compared to most of the strikers out there.
He is. Yeah, I think we probably exhausted most of it now, haven't we?
Look, so I can't believe Ben White's got 73 points. He didn't pick them up when he was in my team anyway.
Not that much. Not that far off KDB, is he? Okay, final question we had off Owen Kinnear. The most important question of the night. What are the first 3 things you have on a cooked breakfast? I'll go first because I had time to think about it. I think you've got to have beans, because if you don't have beans, everything's a bit dry.
Have a bit of moisture.
Sausage, I think, is nice bit of
normal round ones.
Normal round. Don't want any of this square
rectangle.
I've gone for a bit of a punt for my third one because I didn't want to be, boring. But
differential.
I am
differential.
Well, I say it's differential. It's I've gone for black pudding because I do obviously like bacon and eggs and all that, but I do find a black pudding. It's like similar to stuffing on a Sunday roast. I find it contrasts nicely against the rest of the food and makes it a meal. So they're my 3. Ian, as our guest, what are your 3?
It's a 3B. This has.
What? You didn't preempt this question?
No. Right, Lincolnshire sausages.
Oh, you got to go one step further, haven't you?
Fried potatoes.
Oof.
And well done grilled tomatoes. Almost burnt.
Someone has their breakfast. I'm trying to think where they do those fried potatoes. It's the Premier Inn, isn't it? The Premier Inn do all that food.
They do them at Frankie and Benny's.
Oh, Frankie and Benny's. Well, I'm sure they do them in a Premier Inn or the restaurant next to them or wherever it is. But very nice, Ian. Dan, breakfast?
Normal sausage, but from a butcher. Nothing from Tesco's or anything. Proper sausage, beans, and an egg. That'll do.
Paul, anything different?
I've got a phobia of baked beans. Genuinely, like I can't handle someone eating baked beans around me or the smell.
It's good to know.
So when we do our podcast tour of the UK, we'll bear that in mind when we've all got hangovers in the morning. Square sausage, bacon, and haggis.
Haggis.
So they do, like up here, they do as popular as black pudding is with a cooked breakfast. Haggis is equally as like similar cuts, like round cuts.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you call it a full English or is it a full Scottish?
No, genuinely full Scottish. Yeah.
Matt Woolley shouts out hash browns. You can't really argue with hash browns, especially with beans.
You get potato scones. Do you just get potato scones in your fry-ups?
No.
Or is that a Scottish thing?
Honestly.
Yeah, I thought
potato scones.
Tatty scones. Yeah.
Norman shouts out fried bread. I think that's a great shout. Fried bread, underrated. James Street, baked beans, cold and out of the tin. Has anyone ever done that?
Sick.
Oh,
I do that sometimes for lunch if I'm having like cold ham and cheese and things. Absolutely gorgeous.
I've actually got a story about tatty scones.
Go on.
So I was in Vegas maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and I befriended a croupier who was from Scotland. He was a Partick Thistle fan, and he had a Partick Thistle badge on his badge, so I recognised that he was Scottish straight off and started started speaking to him, and I had planned to go the following year with my girlfriend, and he's like, if you come across, would you mind bringing me across some Kit Kats and some tatty scones? So I did, and I brought them back across the following year, and he hooked us up with free tickets to shows, and I ended up playing for his local football team when we were over there. It was pretty cool.
That's amazing. In Vegas.
Excellent.
What was the name of the team?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
The Las Vegas Partick Thistle Supporters Club.
That is amazing. Back to breakfast. Norman, egg, bacon and black pudding. Phil Speck, bacon, hash browns and plum tomatoes. Todd's is bacon, sausage and egg. And Tom Hartnell, custard creams with your tea. We'll go off the food now. Glenn Murray, it's just a bugger catching them haggis. Okay, let's move on before we bore everyone to tears. Finally, on to Dan's rant. Dan, what's upset you this week?
Mike Dean's upset me. He just needs to retire, and he is just getting a joke. I don't want to talk about it. He just annoyed me. Right, yesterday, right, in here, put that tea time. Kids were, just before we're going to watch Masked Singer, quality telly. The weather comes on, and it's like snow in Norwich tonight. It's going to start tonight. Heavy snow overnight. Then there's a weather warning. Not a yellow. It's an amber weather warning, right? Heavy snow, loads of snow. Kid, it's going to snow all overnight. Brilliant. So I thought, all right, do you know what? I'll go to the old garage. I'll get the sleigh out. I'll get all the wellies out, the gloves, the hats. Everything will be ready. So when it comes, just a cup of tea, then we get straight out there. Wake up this morning, there's like not a drop of snow anyway. Do you know what I mean? Made me look like a right knob. I had all this stuff out. It's snowing now. It's a blizzard out there. I don't know how I'm going to get back to the house. So, and now it's typical. I've got to go to work tomorrow as well. So I ain't going to be able to go out in it. I'll have to struggle on to work, keep the country running. So that's annoying.
I can imagine you just walking out in the garden with your kids with like a carrot and a spade and all dressed up to the nines and it's blazing sunshine. Brilliant.
Well, I could see it weren't snowing. I'm still in the house, not a simpleton.
Dad of the year.
So yeah, you're still second in Sun, aren't you? So I've checked the prize money. Checked the flower pot man. He knows that's still 15 grand, even if you come second. So I reckon that's still enough for us to go to Vegas. If not, you can just invest it in we're going on a hub tour, aren't we, this year or next year?
We are. I'm top now, actually, after Gundogan. Scored his couple earlier, so
Vegas. But also we're hoping to do a podcast tour, aren't we? So if some people around the country, like Glenn Murray, he'll put us up in Scotland. Well, actually, we'll stay at Paul's, can't we? Do you know what I mean? But we need people around like these places, Manchester or whatever we're going to go to, Bristol or something. I think you said we've got to go to. Like, we want to stay. We're not paying for a hotel. Unless Will is. I'm not paying for it. So let us know.
And if we go to Vegas, we've got to play for Las Vegas Partick Thistle as well, haven't we? We have to do that.
That's a done deal. So that was it. So the snow really annoyed me. My other thing, right? I have so many people saying, "What's your Overhaul team?" I don't know. Like as now, I don't know, and I won't know till we get these fixtures in the week, right? And I think of us here, right? Us four, you can tell I've been watching. I think we're like a Mr. Miyagi, right? If you're listening to this, reading the articles, we're teaching you how to sand the floor, wax on, wax off. Do you know what I mean? We're teaching you to paint the fence, all this, right? You have to put that together yourself. Do you know what I mean? You got to do it, or we can't do it for you. So, do you know what I mean? Just listen, think on Mr. Miyagi, you're Daniel's son, and that's that.
Brilliant, mate. I'm getting some stick in the chat because we haven't done an update on the mini leagues.
We ain't got time, mate.
I know we have. This is why I didn't do it. But Liam's top, and we ain't
got time. We ain't got time. See you next week.
Liam's top of the Four Nations. Well, I don't think it's updated yet from the scene, but Liam is top. We'll do it extra. So I'll have a big Irish flag all up for you next week, Liam. As long as you're still top. And Glenn says he is. It looks like he's 10th now on the Hub League. Sorry guys, it's the first week we haven't done a league update. That's all you've hung around for 2 hours, and it's the first week we haven't done it because we've been concentrating so much on the Overhaul information. Okay, I think we're done for this week. Thank you so much everyone on the chat as usual for your support. and interaction with us. Another, hopefully it's been really, really helpful indeed. One favour, could everyone please retweet the podcast when we tweet it out later or tomorrow morning? We will be having a one-off Overhaul emergency stream of, as they're now known as an emergency stream with the current reigning Sky champion Liam Dorrian on Friday evening. I think it's 5:30 UK time on Friday. Myself, Paul, and Liam will be on to look at those last minute dilemmas and decisions when we have all the fixtures. We get all the injuries in the FA Cup in midweek, and we have to rip up our teams and start again. So this is the evening.
Hopefully,
what's that?
Hopefully we get a few of the announced, rearranged fixtures for them.
Exactly.
I don't think you get the announcement of the fixtures, but we should be able to work out the teams.
So yes, exactly. So on Friday, there won't be much structure. It'll just be a kind of a discussion. Hop in the chat, with us, join in, ask some questions. Give us your thoughts and your views, and together we will build some really good Overhaul teams each. I'm sure of it. So that is this Friday at 5:30 UK time. You won't want to miss that. Dan, where can people find you?
Article on the Hub this week.
And Twitter.
No, I won't be on Twitter this week.
At Dan Cox 82.
Yeah, I'll be on Twitter.
If anyone wants to DM Dan, his DMs are open all week. Overhaul special. Emergency DMs for Dan this week at Dan Cox 82.
Especially if you want to know when the overhaul is.
Exactly. Paul, where can people find you?
Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1, MCANULTY.
And your DMs are open all week for any questions, no matter how small or personal. Ian, thank you so much for coming on this evening. Incredible help, as always. You've certainly helped me with some last-minute planning. Where can people find you, Ian?
You find me on Twitter at PlanItSky, and also doing the various planners on the Fantasy Football Hub.
If you don't use Ian's stuff on Fantasy Football Hub, what are you doing? And we should also shout out Frank at FF Stuff, who is also partnered now with Fantasy Football Hub. If you're not using these tools, guys, what are you doing? We've got everything you need for fantasy football success at your fingertips.
Fergie, did you know that Dan is now friends with Charlotte Marsh on Twitter, who's a reporter on the Sky Games? And
I did see that, yeah.
And now she follows him as well. So
I saw
we've got an influencer.
I'm sure she posted her match report to Dan on Twitter. Was that right? Did I see that?
Yeah.
So we've got to have a look out now.
I said he was man of the match because the fact that I've got Kane in my team and he got man of the match, just coincidental.
Did you see where Gabriel got a rating of 95?
Yeah, that was special, wasn't it? Flipping it. And I loved Paul's comment that Fergie would never allow that on the Hub. Absolutely right. Anyone sees any type was on the Hub, give me a bollocking. Okay, so this video and podcast will be on the Fantasy Football Hub, Sky and TFF YouTube channel, and also available in all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please click the like button. And remember to subscribe. The bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast first, leave some comments. Luke Schlitter wanted some Valentine's tips. Dan, is this next week? Because I think Valentine's night is next Sunday.
Oh, mate. So yeah, not a fan of Valentine's Day. Do you know what I mean? That is.
Are we doing one next Sunday? Seeing this Valentine's night?
Yes, because there's no decent football on next Sunday, so you'll be all right. Because I was then thinking, like, do you want to then say to your missus, "Oh, do you know what? I'll cook on." My Valentine's is all about saving money and doing it as cheap as you can, right? So, like, go get some flowers from Tesco, but obviously take all the Tesco stuff out of them. I know it's tough, but, like, I've done things that when I've been at work, I've said to all the girls at work, I'll speak to the boyfriend and say, don't send flowers to work because your missus don't like it. Do you know what I mean? Makes me look bad. Don't do it. But then I'll go and buy some flowers from Tesco's, and then I'll, get one of your mates or something to, like, drop them off at your work and say, these flowers are, so that your missus thinks they're from a shop. And I'd always say, I hate in a restaurant. So say I'm going to stay in and cook. But you obviously plan the cooking and your meal around what football's on. So Sunday's all right. Cook the meal between 6 to 9 Sunday. Obviously, if you want to be here with us. Because Saturday's no good because Man City Spurs 5:30. You want to watch that, don't you? Can't read my handwriting. Then Brighton, Villa, probably even want to watch that as well. But Sunday, you've only got West Brom v Man U at 2. So watch that. And then after that, then just get Chinese or get takeaway in. Do you know what I mean?
Why have you got the games written down on a bit of paper and not on some technology somewhere?
I've just got a pad, haven't I? So
here we are going about Ian's planners. Make sure you use all the tools. And Dan's
writing it down with a pen and paper.
The back of a
FF stuff.
Packet. Brilliant.
That's FF stuff. I just print the sheet off, and that's why.
Yeah, on the back of me. I've got multiple things. I've got Ian's planners, FF stuff planners, all around.
It's like instead of downloading them, Dan traces the screen.
I take a picture of the screen and print it off. I can't figure out how to do it.
Okay, so next week, Dan, we want Valentine's tips for actually balancing keeping the other half happy, along with being able to do well in fantasy football. We need a bit more. Like last year. Am I still there?
Still
there.
But do you realise you'll be too late by this time next week, because it is Valentine's Day next Sunday?
Yes.
You ain't got to worry. You can't take your missus out for, like, you're all in lockdown, aren't they, your countries? Do you know what I mean? But here, like, you can't go to a restaurant, so you ain't got to spend that. I think florists are probably shut, aren't they? So you can do it all on the cheap this year. Flowers from Tesco's, get a splash out, go to Marks and Spencer's, get one of them, dine in for 20 quid or something, bottle of champagne, cook it, lovely job. Watch football all around it. Do you know what I mean? Lovely job. And that's about it.
What about
can't get to any shops to buy anything nice.
Put your partner then in the bath, around 8:30 with all the candles, whatever else, and tell you what, you have a soak now for a couple of hours, so then you can jump on the stream for a good hour, get that all done, and then go back, and then I think that's a good balance. I think that works.
That's how Frank likes to listen to this. He's in the bath.
That's what he says it all. Frank actually in the bath now, is he? Brilliant. Anyway, let's wrap up. This could go off anyway, can't it? Okay, our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. Luke Shaletto, just give her a fist bump. There's nothing like romance. And they say romance is dead. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, up to stats, top player, team reveals, and much, much more. If you are not a member of Fantasy Football Hub, what are you doing? You've got to be a member of Fantasy Football Hub, the home of fantasy football. Good luck to all our watchers and listeners this week. We will see you on Friday for the pre-Overhaul emergency stream with Paul and Liam, and we'll be back next Sunday at 9 p.m. to go over our first Overhaul weekend. Stay safe and good night all.